Good morning, everyone. Today's class is going to be on the Florida FAR/BAR sale and purchase contract. And it is 10 o'clock, so out of respect for everyone's time, let's go ahead and we'll get started and jump right into this. Okay, so here it is. Let me show you where to find it within dotloop. Okay, so once you create your loop, you're in here, add document, templates. This is going to be under the FAR/BAR contract and addendum. Here it is right here, the contract, residential contract for sale and purchase. Copy. Okay. Go in here and open it. Okay. So you would fill all of this out, and then it will auto-populate this for you throughout your contract. But for today and training purposes, we'll fill in the blank as we're going through the contract. Okay, so I've pulled up a vacant land listing here, and I just typed in single family homes in the same zip code as our office. And we're just going to go and start with the first one that pops up. Okay, so the first thing we need to know is the seller's information. Who is selling this home? Huggy Bear Ferris. I can't make this stuff up. Okay, so I just copy and paste from the MLS. I don't know what happened there. It didn't copy and paste correctly. Copy. Come over here. Paste. Okay, but I always like to go back and you can double check LIPA, but I like to go one step further and go right in. I'm sorry, that was Realist. I like to go one step further and go into LIPA and check county and public record. Okay, so here you can see that it's Ferris Huggy Bear. I go a step further and I'll pull up their deed. This is admittedly probably a little bit of overkill, but you can see Huggy Bear Ferris is this person's true name. And there it is right there on their deed. Okay, buyer, it's going to be Steve Buyer. Okay, property address, street address, city, and zip. Okay, so street address, and this is going to be in Cape Coral 33990. Okay, we know that Cape Coral is located in Lee County. Property tax ID, right here, PID. Okay, you can see that it's there, but remember that we also went into LIPA, so you can see that it's up here too, the strap number. Legal description, the next thing. And also, please take note, anywhere that you're required to do something on our FAR/BAR contracts, there'll be an asterisk next to the line item number. So anywhere on the contract that you have to fill in the blank, there'll be a little asterisk or a star next to the number, the line item number. Okay, so legal description, we'll go into LIPA here. Here's our legal description. On the MLS, it is located right here. Okay, so either spot that you grab it from is acceptable. Okay, personal property items to be included in this purchase are, and let's back up and let's see what's already outlined here in the contract. Personal property, unless excluded in paragraph 1E or by other items or other terms of this contract, the following items are owned by seller and existing on the property as of the date of the initial offer are included in the purchase: range, oven, refrigerator, dishwasher, disposal, ceiling fan, intercom, light fixtures, drapery rods and draperies, blinds, window treatments, smoke detectors, garage door opener, security gate, and all other access devices, and storm shutters panel. Now, what wasn't listed here that could be considered a major appliance? How about the washer and dryer? Okay. I have heard many stories where an agent forgot to include those there, and unfortunately, for a closing gift, that agent had to buy his buyers a washer and dryer. So make sure you include that. Also, if there's financing involved, try not to include much more than just the washer and dryer on this line. A washer and dryer is acceptable to the lender, but not much more than that will be. Okay, if you include furnishings or things of that nature on this line, I have known certain lenders that have said that, okay, well, we're now going to have to specify a value for those items, and we will not allow the purchaser to borrow that amount. We'll have to deduct that from the amount that we're lending the buyer. Okay, so if there's anything else and there's financing involved, find out from the lender how to handle that. But a lot of times it's probably best to just put that on a separate addendum entirely. Any questions about that, let me know and we'll go over that in full detail at another time. The following items are excluded from the purchase, okay? So if there's anything that's not going to be sold with the sale, please be sure to include that. You don't want to have your seller give up any of their family heirlooms because we neglected to put those items on this line. Okay. Purchase price. We see that this is listed for $214,900. We're going to give them an offer of $210,000. Our buyers really want that house. They're not going to try to be difficult negotiators. Okay. Initial deposit to be held in escrow. You know, at a minimum, this should probably be $1,000. I know when I'm a listing agent, I like to see a minimum of $5,000. You know, I have heard and I have known and experienced in my own career, people walk away from $1,000. It's not enough money to make them stay within a contract. I don't know anybody that's walked away from $5,000. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's never happened, but $5,000 is a lot harder to walk away from than $1,000 or less. Okay. And I always like to check the deposits to be made within 3 days after the effective date. Okay. Then we want to specify who is going to be holding title. Okay. This is located in Lee County, where it's most common that seller picks and pays for title. And this listing agent did as they're supposed to, and they specified who their seller would prefer to use for closing. So let's just copy and paste that over to our contract. not copy and pasting correctly. So 6560. So you can see there, sometimes there's a glitch in the system, and for whatever reason, it did not copy and paste over the whole 7 digits of the phone number. So be vigilant of what you're doing, and make sure that you're reviewing the contract as you're executing it or filling it in. Insurance title. And it stopped at the A. Agency.com. So again, I don't know why it's not copying over everything as it should. Okay, so right there, that box is not large enough to allow me to be able to enter the information that I need to. So I'll have to put that at the end. Okay. C line 661. I'm gonna put it there. Company email address. Okay. And there was not a fax number, so we don't have to put anything there. You can put NA, not applicable. Additional deposit, we're not going to do an additional deposit. $5,000 is enough of good faith. Financing. We're going to make this one an FHA buyer. We know that FHA typically lends at 96.5% of loan to value. So if we take $210,000 and we multiply that by 0.965, that tells us that the total amount financed is going to be $202,650. Okay. Balance to close, not including buyer's closing costs, prepaids, and prorations by wire transfer or other collected funds. So we just do the math here. $210,000 minus their deposit of $5,000 minus the total amount financed, which is $202,650, leaves us with a balance of $2,350 to be collected at closing. Time for acceptance of offer and counter offers. Effective date, okay? If not signed by the buyer and seller and an executed copy delivered to all parties on or before. I usually like to give 24 hours, and then I like to take it one step further and put a expiration time. So we're going to say that we need a response by tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. This offer shall be deemed withdrawn, and the deposit, if any, shall be returned to buyer. Unless otherwise stated, time for acceptance of any counter offers shall be within 2 days after the counter offer is delivered. Okay, so if this person counters, all right, if the seller counters, we've got 2 days to respond to their counter offer. Okay. The effective date of this contract shall be the date when the last one of the buyer and seller has signed and initialed and delivered this offer or final counter offer. Effective date, okay? So let me stop right there and let me also say, once that final signature has occurred on the contract, this contract should no longer be edited, touched, marked up, anything at all. If anything needs to be done to edit this contract, then there needs to be an addendum placed at the end of the contract to go in addition to the contract. Once the contract is fully executed, it should not be altered again. However, during negotiation periods, while you're going back and forth, mark up the contract, absolutely initial, all of that. But once it's been accepted and fully signed off and executed, it should not be touched again. Any questions about that? Please see me. Closing date. Unless modified by other provisions of this contract, the closing of this transaction shall occur, and the closing documents required to be furnished by each party pursuant to this contract shall be delivered on. FHA is involved. We know FHA right now is running on average a minimum of 30 days, but can be as much as 45 days. I know that I have a good relationship with my lender, and I'm confident that they can get it done within 30 days. We'll give them a couple days extra. We'll say on or before 2/16/2021. So if the lender is able to get us closed earlier than that, we have the verbiage and we can go ahead and move that closing date up. Okay. Remember that I said that anything that we have to do on here will be outlined or clearly marked and defined by an asterisk next to the line item. Check if property is subject to lease or occupancy after closing. Well, we know that it's not, and with FHA financing, that's not possible. FHA financing, a buyer must take residence in the property as their main residence or main domicile. Assignability, check 1. A buyer may assign and therefore thereby be released from any further liability under this contract. You know, maybe if you're representing a wholesaler or somebody along those lines, that might be appropriate. May assign but not be released from liability under this contract. Maybe that's somebody that is purchasing the contract in the name of a business or a trust, or maybe this is, again, a wholesaler. Most commonly, this would be the box that I would select. I don't care what you do with the contract, but somebody's going to close on the contract. And at the end of the day, I've created that relationship with you. So if it's not somebody else, I'm going to make sure that it's you. May not assign this contract, okay? I don't care what you do. You've signed this contract. You're going to move forward with this contract. You're not selling the contract to anybody else. The contract's in your name. You're going to be the one to follow through with the contract. That's what that option is. Okay. Looking right down, line 79, 80. We just did those. Our next one, 84. We know that we need to do something here. Financing. Buyer will pay cash for the purchase of this property at closing. Well, that's not true. Remember, we said that it's going to be an FHA buyer. Line 88, this contract is contingent upon buyer obtaining approval of a conventional. No, we said it's going to be FHA. Loan within 30 days. By default, it is 30. I always like to fill in the blank. Loan approval period, it is going to be fixed, adjustable. I'll say, well, fixed or adjustable. I don't know what this buyer is going to do, but you know, if the lender needs to get creative, I don't want to limit them. I want to be able to give the lender the ability to do what they need to do to close the loan for us. And an interest rate not to exceed, I leave this blank because if left blank, then prevailing rate based upon buyer's creditworthiness. Now, if you have a buyer that wants to include a limitation on this, then by all means, please fill that in. Otherwise, leave it blank to get whatever their prevailing rate at their credit score will entail. And for a term of 30 years, okay? The most common FHA is going to be a 30-year financing vehicle. Okay, line 93. Buyers shall make mortgage loan application for the financing within blank. If left blank, then 5 days. We're going to go ahead and say within 5 days as well. Okay, so that means, okay, yeah, great. They've got the pre-approval, but now that they've entered contract, they've got 5 days to move forward with their loan officers to make sure that they get everything moving that needs to be to ensure the financing process is started so that we can get this closed on time. Okay. Keep scrolling. We're looking for the next asterisk. Okay. Assumption of existing mortgage or purchase money note and mortgage to seller. Are either one of those being utilized? No, not today, not with this one, not with our FHA buyer. Okay, line 134, municipal lien search. Or other, are there any other fees involved for closing costs? Okay, number 9, closing costs, title insurance, survey, home warranty, special assessments. Costs to be paid by the seller. Okay, that's what all of these items are. Okay, other than what's stated here, the doc stamps and surtax on deed, the owner's policy and charges, the title search charges, the municipal lien search, the HOA condominium association estoppel fees, the recording or other fees needed to cure title, seller's attorney fees. Are there anything else that might be involved to the seller? Okay. Sometimes I see a brokerage only fee. Sometimes I have seen a credit from the seller be disclosed here. So if there's anything else that the seller is paying, go ahead and you can fill that in there. Okay, these next few lines here, this is the biggest difference between your standard sale and purchase contract and your as-is sale and purchase contract, okay? With this contract, it's going to lock both parties into the contract. And here's what the seller will be liable for. Seller shall pay the following amounts, percentages of the purchase price for the following costs and expenses. Up to, we can either express the dollar amount or a percentage. And by default, if we leave it blank, it's 1.5% for general repair items or a general repair limit, okay? So the seller will be held liable for up to 1.5% of the purchase price for repair of general repair items, or up to 1.5% of the purchase price for wood destroying organisms treatment and repairs, or up to 1.5% of the purchase price for costs associated with closing out open or expired permits and obtaining required building permits for any existing improvement for which permit was not obtained. Okay. And you can see here that they referenced CI, so C1, C3, C1, or 3 down here. So if we look down here, C, 1, 2, and 3. Seller shall designate closing agent, pay for owner's title, owner's policy and charges, and buyer shall pay the premium for the buyer's lender policy and charges. for closing services related to lender's policy, endorsements, and loan closing, which amounts shall be paid by buyer to closing agent or others or such other provider as buyer may select, or buyer shall designate closing agent and pay. So is the seller picking and paying, or is the buyer picking and paying? Well, Lee County seller picks and pays. Okay, but back up here, excuse me for jumping ahead. Okay, so on those terms, 1.5% of the purchase price for those things. If prior to closing, seller is unable to meet the maintenance requirement as required by paragraph 11 of the repairs, replacements, and treatments, or permitting as required by paragraph 12, sums equal to 125% of the estimated cost to complete the applicable items, but not in excess of the applicable, general repair, wood destroying organisms repair, and permit limits set forth above, if any, shall be escrowed at closing. If actual costs of required repairs, replacements, treatments, or permitting exceed the applicable escrowed amounts, seller shall pay such actual costs, but not in excess of applicable general repair, wood destroying organism repair, and permit limits set forth above. Any unused portion of escrowed amounts shall be returned to seller. So let's go to paragraph 11 and 12. Okay. So these are the, when we say those items up to 1.5% of the cost for these repairs, so paragraph 11 and 12 outline what is covered, okay? So if there's ever any dispute on what might be covered, 11 and 12 clearly outline the things that are covered under those items. And you'll notice that cosmetic repair is not one of them. Okay. So moving on down, we see line 158. This is cost to be paid by buyer, okay? Taxes and recording fees on notes and mortgages, recording fees for deed and financing statements, owner's policy and charges, survey and elevation certificate, lender's title policy and endorsement, HOA condominium association application and transfer fees, municipal lien search, loan expenses, appraisal fees, buyer's inspections, buyer's attorney fees, all other related insurance, owner's policy, premium, or other. Okay, if there was anything else that needs to be paid by buyer, then you can outline that here. Again, most common I see is a brokerage only fee. Now, if you've had the buyer execute the buyer's disclosure, then their brokerage only fee is clearly outlined on that, a $345 fee, and is not necessary to include it here. Okay. Title insurance, title evidence and insurance. At least blank, if left blank, then 15, or if paragraph 8A is checked, then 5 days prior to the closing date. I just leave this blank typically. Now, if something else needs to be negotiated, then obviously you can enter in a different number here to be agreed upon by all parties. Okay, line 172 and 176, who's picking and paying for title? Okay, Lee County, seller's going to pick and pay in this case. Line 178, Miami-Dade or Broward Regional Provision, okay? We're not in any of those counties. However, if you do business, then you might want to pay attention to this paragraph here. But again, that doesn't apply to us, so we won't spend any time there. Okay, home warranty. Is your buyer or getting a home warranty? If they are, who's paying for it? At closing, buyer shall pay for a home warranty, or seller shall pay for a home warranty. A lot of times it's negotiated that the seller is going to pay for a home warranty. We're going to say it's going to be issued by American Home Shield. At a cost not to exceed, let's say $600. Okay. Special assessments. Okay, we've got plenty of those here in Cape Coral, right? At closing, seller shall pay the full amount of liens imposed by a public body. Public body does not include a condominium or homeowners association that are certified, confirmed, and ratified before closing, and the amount of the public body's most recent estimate or assessment for an improvement which is substantially complete as of effective date, but that has not resulted in a lien being imposed on the property before closing. Buyer shall pay all other assessments. If special assessments may be paid in installments, check 1. Well, yes, we know that, yes, that is an option with our assessments, our utility expansion assessments here in the Cape. They can be paid in installments. Okay, so do we want the seller to pay installments due prior to closing and buyer to pay installments due after closing? Or do we want the seller to pay the assessments in full prior to or at the time of closing? Okay, I've seen it being negotiated either way, but most commonly, seller will pay for everything up to the time of closing and buyer will assume from day of closing forward. Okay, any questions about that? Please feel free to reach out to me. Disclosures, you'll see there's no asterisks here, so this is just disclosure. 224. All right, deals with flood insurance. If property is in a special flood hazard area or Coastal Barrier Resources Act designated area or otherwise protected area identified by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service under the Coastal Barrier Resources Act, and the lowest flow or elevation for the building and or flood insurance rating flood insurance rating purposes is below minimum flood elevation or is ineligible for flood insurance coverage through the National Flood Insurance Program or private flood insurance as provided in 42 U.S.C. 401(2)(a). Buyer may terminate this contract by delivering written notice to seller within, and by default, if we leave it blank, 20 days after the effective date, and buyer shall be refunded the deposit, thereby releasing buyer and seller from all further obligations under the contract, failing which buyer accepts existing elevation of buildings and flood zone designation of property. Okay, so if you don't deliver the notice, then it's assumed that buyer will accept and is moving forward with the purchase. By default, this is 20. You can leave it blank and it will still represent 20 days, that is. And if you need to make any changes, then obviously you can enter any number there to be agreed upon by all parties. Okay, again, more disclosures. Lead-based paint, remember that if property includes pre-1978 residential housing, a lead-based paint disclosure is mandatory. All right, so if the property that's being purchased was built in 1978 or earlier, be sure to include your lead-based paint disclosure. Okay, if it's in an HOA or a condo, then make sure that you include your HOA disclosure. If it's in a CDD, make sure you have that disclosure. If FERPTA is involved, then make sure you have that disclosure. And yes, a seller disclosure with every transaction would be ideal. Okay. Inspection period. Buyer shall have blank days after the effective date or their inspection period, within which buyer may, at buyer's expense, conduct general wood-destroying organism and permanent inspections described below. So by default, it's 15 days. we're in a tight market right now. Maybe we want to make our offer a little stronger. We're going to shorten that to 10 days. 10 days is plenty of time to be able to get in there, get a home inspector, and get the property inspected. Okay, more disclosure about inspection and what's involved in that and what is permissible. Okay, more about escrow and how that's supposed to be handled. Your liability. Okay. We're not going to read through all of this right now. However, all of this is very good to know and have a clear understanding of. And if you have any questions about any of this, feel free to reach out to me. But I strongly advise that you read through this and have a full understanding of the verbiage that's included in the contract that you're presenting. Okay. Again, I'm just scrolling through all of this to look for our next asterisk to let us know what is the next thing that we need to complete on this contract. What's the next blank that we need to fill in? Ah, here we go, line 649. What addenda is going to be included with this? All right, we know that this is FHA, so we need FHA financing. It's not a condo. It's not in an HOA. We're not asking for seller financing. There is no mortgage assumption. With FHA financing, automatically there will be an appraisal that will be involved in order to obtain financing. So we don't need to include an appraisal contingency on top of that. This is not a short sale. This one, we're lucky. It's inland. It does not fall in a flood zone. Nothing to do with interest-bearing account. Here we go, as is, right? So you can present this on the standard FAR contract, and maybe the seller wants to come back and counter that they would like the property to be as is. Well, you do not need to rewrite the entire contract. You can simply include an as-is addendum that will transition this to an as-is contract. Any questions about that? Feel free to reach out to me. Right to inspect, cancel, defective drywall, coastal construction control line, insulation disclosure, lead-based paint disclosure, housing for older persons. Is it in an age-restricted community? Is it in one of those 55 and better communities? Is there any rezoning involved? Lease purchase item. Pre-closing occupancy, post-closing occupancy. And with FHA financing, neither of these is going to be common, but I have seen these items come up in our market. Sale of buyer's property. This is very common right now. They need to include a contingency that the buyer's property needs to sell maybe in New York and close prior to them being able to move forward with the purchase of this property. Probably not going to be common, won't be common, most likely with an FHA financing contingency. But some of the other ones, yes, it will be more common. Kick out clause. I've seen some of those with multiple offers in the tight market that we're in right now. Sometimes there is a kick out clause. Any questions about that? And feel free to get in touch with me. Seller's attorney approval, buyer's attorney approval. Maybe your client wants to have their attorney look things over, and that's perfectly fine. Just include the addendum to say so. If there's a licensee interest in the property, then we have to disclose that by law. So let's include that addendum. Binding arbitration, and again, Miami-Dade. If you do business there, make sure that you follow their guidelines. If there's anything else here, FHA, it's very common that an FHA buyer might need some help with their closing costs, and they might need a credit from the seller to do so. So this is where you would enter that. Seller to credit buyer $5,000 dollars at closing to be used towards buyers' closing costs and or prepaid expenses. Okay. And then you'd have your buyer execute here. You see another, and oh, excuse me, let me back up. Counter offer and rejection. Okay, this is especially important if you are dealing with a seller, you receive this contract back, you've received multiple offers, but you are negotiating one contract at a time. Make sure you check this box to signify that the seller has rejected the offer, and you've sent this back to the buyer's agent before moving on and negotiating a new offer. This takes this offer out of play and lets them know that you are only negotiating one offer at a time. Don't get yourself in trouble, negotiate two offers at a time, and accidentally go under contract twice with two different parties. Only one at a time. Any questions? Let me know. Buyer, your signatures down here. We need to make sure that all parties, buyer and seller, execute this in order to make it a valid legal binding document. Buyer's address for purposes of notice and seller's address for purposes of notice. If you know this, great. If not, don't worry about it. Title company will get the information, I promise. Okay. This one is me. I'm with Coldwell Banker. Okay, who was this listed by? Jack Martin III. And Jack is with Century 21 Selling Paradise. Okay. And that's it. Okay. And then, to be fully executed, it requires signatures from all parties on this final page, but then initials from all parties at the bottom of each and every page of this contract. All right, let's jump back into here, stop sharing my screen. And I believe that's all that we have for today. Now, if you do have any questions, send me an email, text, phone call, let me know. I'm happy to help. Reach out to me anytime. I'm here for you. But thank you for your time today. I appreciate you joining us. See you on the next one.